There's a thin line between heroism and madness.
Here the line fades to nothing at all.
This is a world of capes and lunatics.
And nothing is off limits.
Hey everyone, this is Phil. Welcome to a Capes and Lunatics special. What you're about to listen to is a interview that the great Lilith Hellfire and I did for our Legends of DC podcast before we started this venture, Capes and Lunatics, with Charlie and Tyler. The interview is so good we didn't want it to fall by the wayside, so we thought we'd throw it up here. What you're about to hear is an interview that Lilith and I did with Clay and Susan Griffith. They're a married couple. They're also authors. They even know a bunch of their stuff, but what we're discussing with them here is their novels that they did. Lilith and I had previously discussed their first novel in the series. It was a Flash novel, The Haunting of Barry Allen, and then the sequel that we were able to sit down with them for, Arrow, A Generation of Vipers. It's just a really good interview about the books and their careers and their love of comics, like most of us. So sit back and relax, take a trip back to a few weeks ago as Lilith and I sit down with two great writers. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Legends of DC special. This time we're here to talk about the Arrow novel, A Generation of Vipers, and we'll probably get into this novel we talked about last time, The Flash, The Haunting of Barry Allen. It's me, Phil, and Lilith is here, but we might backtrack a little bit because this is a special episode because we actually have the authors who wrote both of these books, Clay and Susan Griffith. How are you guys this morning?
Well, great. Thank you.
Yeah, doing just fine. Thanks for having us.
So you both are big superhero fans?
Oh, yeah. We've been reading comics. I've been reading comics since the early 80s, even probably before that, probably the early 70s. And Clay's probably about longer than that.
I'm a comic book guy from the 60s. I remember the Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four, and the old Flash, Aquaman, Atom stuff from DC. So superhero people from way back.
Yeah, I was more Marvel, but he's been slowly converting me to DC.
Is it really true you guys met in a bookstore over X-Men issue number 201? Because that's like the dream right there.
It is true, though. There's been some contention over how that exactly went down. But yes, we met over the comic book, and we've been together ever since.
Yeah, the event is true. Susan likes to tell the story that I gave away the ending of the comic. I worked at the bookstore, and she was buying the comic, and I had already read it. So I'm sure I mentioned that it was a good story, and she claims that I gave away. It was a story where Cyclops and Storm were fighting for control of the X-Men, and Storm wins. I don't think that's a spoiler now.
It's been enough years. It's okay.
I gave it away. I don't believe I did. But
he totally did.
That was going to be my question. I know you came together over a book. I was like, what book is it? But, well...
Were you guys already writers before you met?
Yeah, not like published. I mean, I was published in like small fiction, short stories and some poetry and stuff. But my main goal was to write a novel. But his main goal at that time was to write comic books. And he had been trying to break into comics for quite a while. You probably had some stuff.
I don't think so. I think that was before I actually got anything published. Yeah, back when I was in graduate school, believe it or not, I decided I wanted to write comic books for a living, and because someone has to do it. So I tried to break in for a long time, and I did get some stuff published solo, and then Susan and I wrote some stuff together after we came together. But we eventually moved out of comics and started focusing more on straight fiction.
Well, that was going to be my one question: is if either one of you were interested in writing comics. Is there if Marvel or DC came to you, is there any character like you that either one of you is just, I have to write that character?
It changes over time, actually. There have been a lot of characters that would have been my go-to, but ultimately, probably over my entire life, if I could write Superman, that would be the ultimate goal, because he's the ultimate superhero. I mean, he is all superheroes put together. He was the first, and I think he's the best. I would write Superman in a heartbeat.
You sound like a friend of ours.
Tyler, you met his kindred spirit.
That's right.
And I was a big X-Men fan back in the day when Claremont was at the helm, and those stories was what really opened my eyes to comic books as to what they could be, aside from the stuff that I had been reading prior. So it was, for me, I was to do an X-Men story at any point on any, and most of the characters I have an affinity for. I was really a huge Storm fan, and I don't think she's gotten the love or the attention that she deserves in these periods. Though I haven't been reading X-Men recently, so I shouldn't be saying that. But she was one of my big characters growing up.
I see. Like, I know you have published a couple books, like original ideas of your own. Whose idea was it to do these Flash and Arrow novels? Did you go to them with the idea, or did they say, "Hey, we need a Flash and Arrow novel"?
The latter, actually. The editor at Titan Books, who's the publisher, is someone I've known for many years. He used to be an editor at Marvel Comics, and I've known him off and on, mainly just sort of, hey, at conventions, sort of good to see you again kind of thing. And we would occasionally sit down and have lunch at Dragon Con or Heroes Con in Charlotte, North Carolina. And gosh, it might have been 2 years ago now. We were having one of these lunches, and he said, I've got some ideas. We've got some properties we're looking for. And he mentioned one, a different one, and we said, no, that one's not really our style. And then he said, okay, well, we have the Flash. And I went, yes, that one is our style. We would love to do the Flash. And originally it was going to be a Flash novel, and then he was actually the one who said, you know what we should do is also, we have the rights to the Arrow as well. We should do a crossover event like they do on TV. And we said, yes, that would be a good idea. We like both of those shows, and we would love to write both of them.
What were the guidelines for the book? Like, were the people that are involved in the TV show, did they give you like a show Bible, or were you, since you guys seemed like you were already watching the shows, so you did really capture a lot of great like character stuff that we've kind of been missing. So like Phil and I were talking about that when we were reviewing the book, like they really get these characters, and it really feels like they, were watching the show.
We appreciate that, because that was our main goal, was to make sure those characters are right. That's one of my pet peeves is making sure characters are true to the way they were originally developed. And they did come with some specifics, not so much the stories, but they basically came to us and said, we want some ideas. So we pitched them three outlines. One was awesome, and it had Gorilla Grodd in it as the main villain. Ooh. But unfortunately, they said that they had a whole Gorilla Grodd thing coming up, and that we couldn't do that. So, which Clay was very depressed about, because that was his main goal, was to try and get Grodd in there. So they nixed another one, and then they finally came up. They finally liked the last one, and we went ahead with that. Now they had very specific characters we couldn't use, very specific. They wanted it to be very nebulous. They didn't want it to fit into any particular area. They wanted it to be just, you sort of had to give it some point of reference.
In terms of continuity.
In terms of continuity, did not want it to be anything specific. So it was very disheartening and actually kind of complex to try and write something that didn't quite fit into a very specific slot. Because
there are characters who are obviously in there and characters who aren't, and both in the Flash and the Arrow book. I mean, for instance, we reference Zoom, and yet Wally's not in there, and there's no version of Harrison Wells who shows up, except in the sort of dream sequences. But that was on their desire, because they had plans for certain characters, and either they knew how they were going to develop, or they maybe didn't. And they didn't want us to jump the gun on certain things. But we wrote it during, I guess it was Flash season 2, and it would have been Arrow season 4, I guess. That's when we were doing the majority of the writing. So our reference on the character structure was primarily those seasons and prior. So we were pulling from the first season of Flash, and then parts of season 2, and then the first mainly 3 seasons of Arrow, which is when the core of those characters came together. Oliver and Felicity and John, and that's the group that the fans really seem to love. And in some ways, when you're writing a moment in time like we were, it's easier than writing a television show. The television show has to come up with something every week. They have to do something that's a little bit different so it doesn't get stale, but yet it's still the same so people get what they like. And that's incredibly difficult for those guys.
Yeah, characters evolve as you go through these shows. So in a book, you're much luckier because you're basically, like Clay says, you're capturing a moment in time. And we happen to capture a moment in time that we loved in terms of those characters, in terms of of what was going on at the show at the time. So
yeah, you look for the archetype. This is what makes Oliver Oliver. This is what makes Felicity Felicity. And you write to the core of the character, which means the fans read it and go, oh, that's what I really love about the character. And that's true, we hope. But the guys on the TV show don't always have that luxury, because they have to change enough that people don't tune in every week and go, oh, that's the same thing I saw last week. So, writing a weekly TV show must be so difficult, which we'd love to do one.
Exactly.
Did you guys also read the first novel for the Arrow, Vengeance?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Which kind of filled in. It was mainly the bad guys. I read it a long time ago. I'm trying to remember. When we first got the job, we went and got it and read it. It was mainly sort of the bad guys, kind of a fill-in. Here's the holes that weren't explained on the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which we enjoyed. It just, I wanted more of the characters that I knew and loved and watched on the show. That's what I wanted. But it was a fine novel. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't my cup of tea for a media tie-in novel.
Yeah, we were talking about how Oscar actually ended up going into the writers' room. Like, well, maybe we can just start a rumor. Like, hey, maybe Susan and Clay will join the writers' room. But you guys seem like you just are very content with being book writers. And I love the depth of your books. By the way, like Vampire Empire. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you read them. Thank you.
Yeah, I love vampires. I love you got this urban mythology thing going on. I just really like it's very in the vein of Dresden Files, which I love. So
yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're very proud of Vampire Empire.
That's our little our claim to fame, our little crown that we love. That it means the most to us because that's an original work and it has been received very well with the fans and it's hopefully still continuing. We want to keep going with it.
Oh, awesome.
But I think in my opinion, you definitely succeeded at getting the tone of Flash and Arrow. I love these books, especially the Arrow book. Ask Lilith. I bought the book and 2 days later, I'm like, hey, I'm done with the Arrow book. I couldn't put it down.
Wow, thank you.
Good, thank you. It's a trick when you're writing tie-in novels. One, you want to put in some character, but it's also an adventure story. Yeah. It's got to move. We don't mind. Some writers, if someone said, yeah, I read your book in a day, you go, oh, wow, there must not have been much there. But in this type of book, I remember picking up books when I was a kid, and you read them in a day because they were great, and they moved, and they went from one place to another. These are action-adventure stories, and character is great, but the characters have to be doing something, including shooting people with arrows. It's fantastic. People are really tearing through it.
Yeah, I love these shows, and I could definitely see these as episodes. This could be a crossover 1 year. Even the Arrow novel. You even have got the trademark Arrow flashbacks in there. I was like, this is definitely an episode.
Which we loved. I loved the whole thing about being back on the island. Those were some of my favorite moments to write. Just him being a mentor with Yao Fei and that kind of stuff was my candy. Clay did some of those scenes and I lapped them up like a fan.
Well, that probably brings me to my other question. Is it better to work with your spouse, writing wise, or are there difficult times, or both?
Better versus what? Better versus not working?
It's a trick. As a writer, you're a collaborator no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. People like to think it's a solitary thing, but you got beta readers, you got editors, you got proofreaders, you got people always criticizing your work. We just happen to have it constant criticism always because we basically write very detailed. We write a very detailed outline. It has to be because we want to make sure that we're not writing over each other, and we know specifically what's going to happen in this chapter. So when he's writing 3 chapters ahead of me, he's not doing something that's going to undermine, or I'm not writing something that's undermining him, or vice versa. So those things have to be planned out very much ahead, and it makes it difficult. I mean, there's always going to be discussions of whether, I think a Felicity Oliver bedroom scene could be in there, and whether it should be in there, and he may not. I mean, it's those little things you have to talk about, but you have to resolve them. I mean, we've got to eat dinner over meatloaf in an hour, or a couple hours. So those arguments have to be solved, and I mean, it's a process, and sure, there's going to be arguments, and there's going to be debates over a lot of things, but it's fun because you always have someone to discuss your problem with. If I have hit a dead end, I can go to him and go, this is what's going on. This is where my problem is. What do I do? And he can do the same thing.
Well, I think you pulled it off perfectly, because if I hadn't seen both your names on the covers, I would have thought this was one writer.
Well, that's what we're going for. There are collaborators who sort of enjoy having different voices, where one person will write one chapter and the next other person will write the next chapter, and they want it to sound like different writers. Our goal is to create a unit called Clay and Susan Griffith, and there should be no difference between our voices. Even for people who know us well, we don't want them to know who wrote what scene.
Yeah, we edit each other's works very heavily, so both voices sort of dissipate, and so both individual voices dissipate, and basically a new voice is on the page. So it's not exactly my voice, it's not exactly Clay's voice, but it's our voice.
But with Flash and Arrow, it wasn't as difficult as, say, our original work to work together, because there's an existing product.
Yeah.
There's the TV show. So if we had disagreements, it's Barry wouldn't act this way, or Oliver wouldn't act this way. It's easier to make the case because you can point to a show and go, well, look at him, here he is doing this. Or so when we do original work, it's more difficult because we're
creating as we speak.
Yeah. So having the show to base it off of made it actually an easier collaboration.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Have you guys ever thought about doing comic books for Vampire Empire, or maybe Crown and Key, just like to test the waters or anything like that?
We would love to, except that we're not artists. We're only writers. So the trouble with comic books, it's such another collaborative thing, because you got to have an artist, you got to have an inker, you got to have a letterer, you got to have all those things in play.
Come on, all those cons you go to, you guys could run into somebody you could find chemistry with.
Well, yeah, we've looked into it, but the thing is, what I would love to do is license Vampire Empire to a publisher and have us write the scripts and then have them handle all the other stuff. But the way it works these days, except maybe with Marvel and DC, and they would only license it if it was a gigantic hit, and probably had movies. You have to create the package yourself. You have to hire the artist, you have to hire the inkers, and et cetera. You have to create the comic book and then go to the publisher and hand it to them and say, would you basically print and distribute this for me? Mm-hmm. And right now we just don't have the time to do that. There are people who do it. They do it marvelously, but it's just not in our future. And Crown and Key we couldn't do because we don't actually own that. That's owned by.
Yeah, I mean, we helped create it for them, and we've got some portion of it, but the majority of it was something that they had come to us with and said, this is what we have a great idea. It was a transmedia project, and so they had envisioned a lot of other things to go along with it, but none of the other things came to pass, and all they actually wound up doing were the books. It's, I love that series too. That's that was a fun series to write. It was like, Victorian Avengers for us, or Charlotte Bronte's Avengers. Basically like writing a comic book. So it was fun. But with Vampire Empire, originally it was supposed to be a comic book. Clay had designed it originally to be a comic, except as we were writing it, I just was going, this is way too much. We can't fit all this stuff in a comic book. There's so much nuance, so much history. This would be great as a novel. And so we did it as a novel instead. And that's where that's the direction it went.
Or as the fans have been saying, a TV show.
Hey.
We need the fans to speak up and shout that from the highest heavens.
Would be great.
Yeah, nobody listens to writers anymore. That it's only to the fans. That if the book takes off on the fan level and gets those legs and gets that attention, then other people start looking at it. Just the writer going, "Oh, my book is fantastic." Nobody pays any attention to us.
Interestingly enough, when the first book in Vampire Empire, Greyfriar, came out, it got shopped around a little bit, like a lot of books do, and nothing ever came of it. But I remember either our agent or the sub-agent or something said, yeah, we're pitching it to a couple of different people this week. And one of the people they were pitching it to was Greg Berlanti. And it came back and said, no, he ultimately wasn't interested. He's working on this thing. He's going to adapt the Green Arrow and make it into a television show. I thought, oh, well, I guess that'll probably do great. But it should do Vampire Empire instead.
All these little connections.
So Greg hasn't called us. But,
no, he has not.
But yeah, these books are great. Both of you, who is like your favorite character from the Arrowverse? They don't even have to be in these books, but who's like each one of you? Who's your favorite character? Who do you identify with the most?
From the entire Arrowverse, or just from Arrow?
From the Arrowverse, yeah.
Well, it's two actually. Barry, obviously the Flash, and primarily paired with Joe. The moments, particularly like in season 1 and 2, and particularly season 1, which was season 1 of The Flash is one of the greatest TV shows I've ever seen.
Yes.
The Barry and Joe moments are so touching and so great. We tried to recreate those as much as we could. I love that pairing. Those are two of my favorite characters ever on television.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. Joe is what really resonated, the father-son aspect. That's a big motif for me, and it was very strong. I still love, in Arrowverse, it's Felicity and Arrow. I'm always with those two are still my favorite characters of all time, and I wish that they were developing them in a different direction in the show, but I'm still happy with the way Felicity's been done in some fashion. But it's about those character relationships, whether it be father-son, whether it be best friends, whether it be lovers, whatever. It's character dynamics like that really intrigue me and what makes me want to keep writing as a writer. So yeah.
And Oliver and John, we call him John a lot. I mean, I know in the show they tend to refer to Dig or Dig. That's a great dynamic. Yeah. They seem to have gone astray a little bit recently, although they had a terrific scene with them just a couple of weeks ago. Finally, another great scene. Yeah. But those little moments, like when they would sit down and share a drink, those were terrific little moments that connected episodes and connected the series and gave you this little motif that ran throughout the series that was just terrific. I wish they would get back to those moments a little bit more.
Yeah, I do too.
People after our own hearts, Phil.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we even said with the first book that Joe rang so true with us. And I think, Lilith, did you even say, like, we wish we got more of this Joe stuff in the show the way he was in the first book? And
yeah, I definitely do. Do you guys happen to watch Legends of DC? Because they could use a book. Just saying.
They sure could. They need a lot of stuff filled in. I watch it. It's not one of my favorites, though. I do like it as just a kind of separate on its own. It's not really connecting too much for me and the other shows. I do like it. I do watch it. It doesn't have as many character dynamics that I like. I really wish that they would really play more with their characters to some extent. But I don't think Clay watches it.
I watched the first season, and I've dipped into the second season. I don't watch a lot of regular TV. I watch The Flash and Arrow and a few other things here and there.
Archer.
Archer. I come home and I write basically. I work a full-time job and then I come home and I write in the evening. So I don't watch a lot of television. I'll have like a baseball game on in the background. But I like aspects of Legends. I keep wanting to call it Legion of Superheroes, but it's not Legend. I like the Atom. I like Ray Palmer a lot. I liked him when he was on Arrow and Flash, and I wish there was more with him. I really like that guy. I like the actor.
He's who I started watching it for, and I wound up liking the two guys I didn't like, which were the two bad elements. I forgot what their names are now.
Snart and Cold.
Yeah.
I mean, Cold and Mick. Yeah.
Yeah. And his character's gotten the most story arc, and that's I love that. His character growth and for the rise and fall of him has been, and the rise again has been interesting to me.
You're saying get into season 2? I mean, unless you don't like time travel, because I know writing time travel can be tricky.
Oh.
That's because it's the main thing of the show. That's one thing that's like probably prevented a lot of people from maybe, because that show definitely needs to fill in some blanks, and I think you guys would be perfect if you.
Well, thank you. Well, we'll give them our number.
We'll totally tweet Greg though. We will.
Yeah. Tell him to revisit that Vampire Empire thing too. Maybe he's still got a copy in his desk drawer.
We'll mail one to the writer's room.
Thank you.
And we need more Arrowverse books from you too.
Yeah, that'd be cool. We'd like to do more. I mean, Titan is doing more, and they ask us about writing another one, but we're trying to. We want to balance doing tie-in material with our own original stuff. Mm-hmm. So we just did the 2 tie-ins, Flash and Arrow, and we want our next project to be an original. We don't want to leave our own stuff behind. So I assume they'll find other writers who are extremely qualified and skilled and do the next Flash book anyway. And hopefully we'll be able to do another one down the line if the series keeps going.
Well,
awesome.
Lilith is a good salesman for you both of you, because I have to go out and read these novels now, the original novels.
Yeah, please do.
And thank you, Lilith. We love fans. We haven't near enough.
I don't know if I have anything else. Lilith, do you?
No, I think that they've been great guests, and we should let them get back to their morning.
Well, if you have anything else you need to ask us, let us know, and we'll be happy to fill in any blanks you have.
Yep, it was fun. Thank you very much.
Actually, you guys got any shameless plugs? Your website, your social media?
We are
any upcoming projects we should be on the lookout for?
We don't have any contracts signed for upcoming projects, so we can't really talk about anything. We are working on stuff at all times. So
we've got 2 things in the pipe that hopefully will come to pass, knock on wood. But one will be original, one something else. We're not quite sure what's going on with that one, but we're hoping. And our website is Clay and Susan, CLAYAND Susan Griffith .com.
And we're on Facebook, both as individual humans and as Clay and Susan Griffith or Vampire Empire. I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's at Vampire Empire on Facebook.
Set up you can find us on either.
And we're on Twitter, I think, at Clay and Susan.
Okay.
So we're all over the place.
Are you guys, did I hear you were going to Dragon Con, or what con was that was coming up that you guys are going to?
Dragon Con pretty much every year. That's in Atlanta over Labor Day weekend. So we're usually there, and we plan to be there again this year. Yeah. And our only other con that we're going to do, as far as I know, is Heroes Con. It's a comic book convention.
Right?
It's Charlotte. Yeah, it's a great convention.
Yeah.
It's a terrific comic book convention. That's in June, I believe.
Yeah. Hopefully next year we'll be adding more to the list. This year we were just a little bit more Spartan just for finance sake, but hopefully things are moving better, and we're going to add more to the list next year.
We like to do, if we can, Comic-Con in San Diego, because that's the great giant con of all times. But even if we don't go, I usually will post photos online of me and the cat sitting around the house pretending we're at Comic-Con.
It's sad. Don't talk about that. But hopefully next year we'll be able to go again.
Last year we didn't go, but the cat and I had a great panel.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful guests. Have a great Saturday afternoon, okay?
And thank you for your enthusiasm over the books. We really appreciate it. It's nice to know that the fans are embracing them wholeheartedly. So thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks. Wow, that was great. All right, everyone. Tell us what you thought of the interview. I thought it went great, but you can get a hold of us. Wait, why am I at a loss? Okay.
We're doing it as a Legends of DC special, so.
Yeah, I know. So email us, flasharrowpodcast@gmail.com. On Twitter, you can find us at Legends of DC Pod. That's like your one-stop shop for all our shows. And just follow us on Instagram, Legends of DC Pod. And Lilith, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Lilith Hellfire, or anywhere in the social media sphere at Adventures in FG. Please be sure to check out the website adventuresinfangirling.com. Like and share those articles. Leave me some comments. I do read and respond. So I will see you in the comments section later.
And as for me, you can always discuss any of this DC or Marvel stuff at nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp. And just check out all my podcasts and blogs at billparrish.wordpress.com. So how do we end this? Run, fans, run! Don't fail this city.
Basically.
All right. See you next time, everyone.